Will cooling down inflation make you jobless? There is definitely a correlation between raising interest rates in order to bring down inflation and unemployment rising around that same time. And that makes total sense because now it's more expensive for different corporations to borrow money in order to operate their business. So when the cost of doing business is more expensive for different corporations, what they do to save money is that they lay off a ton of workers. And we see this happening right now in the tech industry. Now, in today's video, I'm going to show this exact correlation that the higher we raise interest rates, the higher unemployment goes. And I'm also going to just break down a recent job report showing an increase in employment and how that's not entirely the best thing if you want to make housing more affordable, because we do want to bring down inflation. But in order to do that, it's just a byproduct that unemployment does go up. So I know the Fed, Jay Powell, they have a very difficult job because they do want to bring down inflation to make it affordable for most people to buy different things in the economy. But at the same time, they don't want unemployment to go extremely high. Recently, at a Senate Banking Committee, a senator from Louisiana questioned Jay Powell about this very correlation.
One of the measures.
Okay. So in effect, I'm not being critical. When you're slowing the economy, you're trying to put people out of work. That's your job, is it not?
Not really. We're trying to restore price stability.
No, you're trying to raise
not wages.
You're trying to raise the unemployment rate.
So first off, I want to give props to Jay Powell for answering the questions in a calm demeanor and for answering a lot of questions directly. Now, Senator John Kennedy from Louisiana did start to pressure Jay Powell into answering and just stating this very correlation between unemployment and higher interest rates. But Jay Powell, he represents the Fed and he has a difficult job of juggling the two of them. And so he answered it the best way that he could. And so it's just great seeing that this dialogue is happening within the Fed between interest rates and unemployment. And let me just say this, I'm not here to pick a side, so if you think I'm going to do that, I'm not. So whether this was a Democrat or a Republican saying the same thing, I'm just here to present the information no matter who it comes from. Now I'm going to share my screen with you all and show you all this unemployment report, this job report, and its correlation with higher interest rates. Before we go on, please be sure to subscribe, comment down below, and like this video, and comment down below if you have any thoughts on unemployment, higher interest rates, and inflation, and what you see happening towards the end of this year. All right, so just looking at this Yahoo Finance article, the US economy added 311,000 jobs last month, more than expected, while the unemployment rate ticked higher to 3.6%. So here, the article is essentially saying that jobs increased, but at the same time, unemployment rate increased. So unemployment did increase, but at the same time, jobs increased more than what they expected. Another interesting thing about this article that I want to state is that here they're saying that, however, the pace of job growth is surely still too rapid for the Fed's liking and won't stand in the way of the Fed continuing to push interest rates higher. The Fed doesn't actually like to see wage growth increase super high because that does contribute to inflation because people have more money and so they spend more money. They pay over asking for housing, for vehicles, and things of that nature. But they still want unemployment to stay low, right? They still want there to be a large labor force, but at the same time, they don't want that to contribute to higher inflation. And looking at this other article right here, it says the Federal Reserve wants wage growth to cool down more and more and believes a higher labor force growth will help them. You can understand how that makes sense. The more workers there are out there, the lower the wages are, because now corporations can pick and choose who they want to pay a higher price to. So wages will go low because there are more supply of workers. So supply will go up and demand will go down, or paying higher wages will go down. Once again, they say here that what the Fed wants to do is for wage growth data on a year-over-year basis to head much lower and stay there. According to the Fed, Americans are getting too much wage growth and labor has power over their bosses. This will not be tolerated in America. So essentially, that's what they're saying, that you see this United States averagely hourly year over year, and you see it in the month of February actually went up to 4.6%. And so that's a definitely increase over last year, and the Fed doesn't like seeing that, right? And so that's why I'm saying, like, raising interest rates do contribute to employment, whether it's people getting paid less or unemployment rising. And to prove that, we have to look at 30-year fixed mortgage rates in the United States. Compare that with unemployment rates, okay? Now, in order to truly understand how rates work compared to unemployment, we have to look back at the 1980s. During the 1980s, there was extremely high inflation. And just like what the Fed is doing this time around, in order to cool down inflation, they raised interest rates a lot, which in turn affected mortgage rates. And so you can see right here, during the 1980s, mortgage rates reached over 18%. So that was its highest at that time. And you can make the correlation between mortgage rates and unemployment. Mortgage rates were higher because essentially the Fed was increasing interest rates. And you can see here from the 1980s, it peaked like 1982s. And then you see unemployment being high in the 1980s and then increasing even more and reaching its peak in 1982. The higher unemployment is, the higher mortgage rates are. And mortgage rates were increasing because interest rates were increasing. So you see the exact correlation. And so that's why in that clip, I was just showing you all how there is that exact correlation. And I don't know what the Fed can actually do in order to not raise unemployment so much if they truly want to cool down inflation. And that's where I showed you all the other articles that their main objective probably is to lower wage growth, but still increase employment. So more and more people have jobs, but they're less paying jobs. Another thing I want to quickly mention about mortgage rates, interest rates, and its effect on home prices. As we know, there are still elevated home prices, right? And at the same time, mortgage rates are super high. And that's because the Fed wants to decrease home prices. And we are starting to see some of that happening. Something interesting that I want to show right quick is what happened during the 1980s when there was inflation, right? And they did increase interest rates. And so you can see here that the home price index during the 1980s fell between, let's say, 104 and 111, right? There wasn't a huge dip in home prices. And so even though the Fed may be increasing interest rates and mortgage rates are increasing, home prices may not drop to the point where it actually makes it affordable for most people. And so that's just something that I want to quickly add to. It just depends on so many factors. But of course, during the 2008 era, there was a huge decrease in home prices. You see that it went from a price index of 380 down to essentially 311. And so we're starting to see more of that here over the past year. We're seeing this decrease happening. And so hopefully it's not like the 1980s where it kind of just stabilized like it did back here. It just stabilized a little bit. It maybe had a few dips, but we want it to go down like it did in 2008 and go down even lower. And so we're starting to see more of that happening because this peak was 308 and currently it's at 294. So hopefully we'll see more of that higher interest rates, affecting home prices and home prices actually dropping. Because we just don't want high interest rates and over 10%, but at the same time, we still have elevated home prices. All right, you all, let me know your thoughts on unemployment, employment, and what this means for the economy as a whole. Be sure to like this video, subscribe, and I'll talk to you all later.